Welcome back to You're All Doomed, the podcast where we slice and dice our way through Friday the 13th, A New Beginning, 13 minutes at a time. I am your host, Brian.
I'm Big Dildo Greg.
This chunk begins with Pete sitting behind the wheel of a car, rat-a-tat-tat, rat-a-tat-tat-tat-tooey, and ends with what looks like a woman with an axe stuck in her stomach. So Pete is sitting behind the wheel of the car, and it's not starting, and, you know, he's turning the key, nothing's happening. And he's singing yet another song, and he's like, "This ain't starting, man. You fucked up. You ain't starting. You fucked up. You fucked up. Gonna kick your ass. Kick your ass. Come on now. Come on, buddy. This ain't starting. Come on, motherfucker. Fix the fucking car. You fucked up again, you asshole." And I'm just starting to wonder, you had mentioned that he wiped his ass with, you know, poison ivy. I'm starting to think he wiped his ass with cocaine.
Yeah.
Because there's just something wrong with this guy.
Maybe he did a line while he was taking a shit.
He must have been, yeah.
Because he is jacked up now.
So the car finally starts, but just as it does start, he yells for Vinny to get in the car, but someone in the back seat grabs his head and slices his neck open with a machete.
Yeah.
So, R.I.P. Pete.
Bye-bye, Pete. Pete was played by Corey Parker, who had a prominent role in Savage Steve Holland's How I Got Into College. He also had a recurring role on Will and Grace. The most interesting thing I found about him was that he was Patrick Dempsey's stepson for 7 years, despite the fact that he's a year older than Patrick Dempsey. So his mother must have had a relationship with a much younger man for a while.
Yeah, I think Patrick Dempsey was 27 years younger than Corey's mother. So, yeah, much younger. So,
good heavens.
And the funny thing is that they are best friends now. So, Patrick Dempsey and Corey Parker. So, yeah, your stepdad becomes your best friend.
Wow. We then cut back to Pinehurst, where Tommy is clearly having another flashback PTSD session. He spends an awful lot of this movie looking clammy. He's almost always got a thin sheen of sweat on his forehead or neck or face. But yeah, he's definitely struggling with the memories of what he's lived through.
And he's seeing visions of Jason too. Like he was, you know, awoken from a nightmare, but now he's like staring at himself in the mirror. I think he was taking a pill to calm himself down, but when he looks in the mirror, standing behind him is Jason, and he freaks out and kind of like, you know, shakes his head and closes his eyes, and then the vision disappears. But in addition to the bad nightmares, he's also seeing Jason when he's awake.
Mm-hmm.
Later that morning, we see an old man making breakfast, and we learn that this is Reggie the Reckless's grandpa. And Reggie tells his grandpa that his brother is going to be in town later today, and he'd like to go see him.
Yeah, it turns out that Reggie the Reckless, a.k.a. Dudley, is only visiting Pinehurst. He's there to spend some time with Gramps. You know, I get the sense there might be some parental care issues going on because, as you noted, you know, his brother is nearby, and clearly Reggie doesn't get to see him very often, so he's excited at this prospect. But Gramps is a little bit concerned, so perhaps Reggie's brother is a bad influence or something.
Gramps doesn't exactly seem sold on the idea of Reggie going to visit his brother, so Reggie gets a little bummed out. But just then, we see a bunch of people start to arrive for breakfast. We see Robin the redhead from the clothesline the other day. We see Ducky from Pretty in Pink, who his name is actually Jake. It appears that Jake has some sort of stutter. I don't know if that really matters, but it's worth pointing out.
That's his defining character trait, apparently.
It seems to be. And he tells Robin that he misses Joey already and that he hopes that Victor gets what's coming to him. There's
a heartbreaking detail that Violet has set too many places at the table because obviously they are now down 2 tenants with Joey's demise and the fact that Victor was hauled away by the police. So, you know, some of the kids point this out, and there's a little bit of conflict about that fact. And
some of the kids get really upset by it, but I love Matt and his saged advice. He just goes, "Look, I know this isn't easy for any of us, so let's just have breakfast."
Yeah, that's going to be my new answer for everything. Anytime that my wife starts getting upset with me about something, I'll just, "Hey, let's just have breakfast." There are a couple of kids that are still missing from the table. Eddie and Tina are nowhere to be found yet.
But Tommy does show up. but he's just kind of like standing in the corner awkwardly and not joining the rest of the group. But again, Matt, with his, welcoming ways, instead of asking Tommy to join them at the table, he asks him to go get Eddie.
Yeah, he's trying to perhaps help Tommy break the ice with some of the other kids by, why don't you go rustle up Eddie and bring him to the table with you?
So Tommy turns to go outside to find Eddie, and just as he goes out, there's a man wearing what appears to be one of Tommy's masks and a flannel shirt with the sleeves cut off, and it's Eddie.
Yeah, he's taken it upon himself to try and spook the new kid, so he jumps out and scares Tommy. This is now the second time we've seen Tommy caught off guard by someone. The first time he got defensive by retaliating against Reggie the Reckless. This time he kind of just stands there staring with anger at Eddie, and Eddie takes this as an invitation to kind of bully Tommy a little bit. He starts kind of shoving him and, oh, I'm just joshing around, man. Can't you take a joke? And just kind of roughhousing a little bit until Tommy kicks his fucking ass.
Yeah, he picks up Eddie and slams him into a table in like a full wrestling move and just starts punching the shit out of him. And he's in a total rage until Matt comes over and he's like, hey, let's just eat breakfast. No, he grabs Tommy and he pins him up against the wall and like calms him down. Because I'm always looking at the stupid details in the background of these scenes. There's a poster hanging on the wall behind Tommy that he's pinned to. And it says 4 ways you can help stop drug abuse before it starts. And those 4 ways are listening, caring, helping, and mentoring. And I'm only pointing that out because we're having a hard time kind of figuring out what type of people are at this facility. And so far we've seen posters about child abuse, and now we've seen a poster about drug abuse. So it's probably all different types of issues. It's not just people that have killed psychotic murderers, with a machete.
Which that's an interesting mixture of kids to have in one environment. Not to diminish anyone's sufferings, but it seems like recovering addicts would probably need a different kind of care and attention than someone with obvious rage issues like Vic, or very traumatic post-psychotic breaks the way Tommy is suffering. So yeah, I mean, Matt's obviously a guy who casts a pretty wide net with taking care of kids.
And that's when we cut to an axe crashing down on a table and cutting off a chicken's head, and it's our old friend Ethel.
Yeah, we get a little scene back at the Hubbards where Ethel and Randy Quaid demonstrate their mutual intelligence. Ethel is obviously preparing some sort of chicken dish.
I wouldn't even go, well, yeah, but there's more to it than that. Junior is sitting at the table nearby, and he's for some reason mimicking Ethel's axe chopping, and she's like, "You big dildo, eat your fucking slop."
Yeah, why? I mean, let's unpack that for a moment. I find it alarming that a woman would call her child a big dildo. That almost makes me wonder if like there's some sort of other relationship that these two have, and she uses him for sexual gratification.
Yeah, it seems more like a husband and wife. I mean, like, not a healthy relationship, but it seems more like a husband and wife relationship than it does a mother and son.
Yeah, it's gross, and he's obviously got developmental intelligence issues, and so he probably does whatever she tells him to do, no matter how uncomfortable that may be.
Yeah, he really is eating a bowl of slop. It's like dripping off his chin, and he's like a baby trying to feed himself. It's just a mess.
Yeah. While this is going on, there's a little bit of commotion at Ethel's back door, so to speak, and a suspicious drifter has showed up, looking for day work.
His name is Raymond, and there's immediately some very, very strange sexual tension between him and Ethel. He says, he shows up saying that he just needs some work, and he says that he'll do whatever he needs to be done. And I was expecting this to go in a much more disgusting direction, but I'm thankful for the way it went, which is that Ethel basically just tells him to go clean out the chicken shit in the chicken shed, and then she'll give him something to eat. So that was much more pleasing to think about than the other possible development.
Than the alternative. I mean, so right now, I mean, we've been introduced to the idea that there is a mysterious killer who took care of Pete and Vinny. So I kind of get the sense that that Raymond the Drifter is introduced to give us a potential suspect in the crime. So we'll kind of have to keep an eye on him and see if he's a sinister character.
Later that day, we see Sheriff Tucker at the scene of Pete and Vinny's murders, and he's barking orders to two of the least unofficial-looking cops I've ever seen. He wants them to scour the area and bring back anything they find. We see the same two paramedics as earlier removing the bodies from the scene, so Duke and Roy. The sheriff wonders aloud, what's going on, and Roy, who just happens to be standing right behind the sheriff when he says this, is like, "What? You're talking to me?" And sheriff's like, "No, what are you talking about? Go do your job."
Yeah, that was a weird exchange. But yeah, Roy was just within earshot and reacted as though the sheriff was speaking to him for some reason.
Later that night, we see Dominic Toretto from the Fast and the Furious come flying down the road and does a skidding 180 into the parking lot of some piece of shit diner.
If only it were Dom. After far too long an absence in this movie, Mr. Mustache, the guy who was helping get Tommy to Pinehurst, shows up doing donuts in the parking lot of this diner where his main squeeze apparently works. So yeah, Billy's back into the picture.
That main squeeze is a waitress at the diner. Her name is Lana. And there's some more painful, flirtatious banter between the two of them, where she's like, "Sorry, we're closed." And he's like, "That's okay. I'm just here for a takeout order. I'll have Lana with nothing on it to go." And then she's like, "Well, who's asking?" And he goes, "The pride of the Unger Institute of the Mental Health, who's just dumped his last bedpan, is ready to party." Like, nice.
Glamorous job. She's got some closing up to do in the diner and needs to freshen up after her work day. So she goes back inside while Billy waits in the car and goes into the establishment's restroom. She stands in front of the mirror and does a really weird and awkward self-exposure reveal of her breasts.
Yeah, she takes her top off and she's like, "Showtime," or something like that.
Yeah, apparently it was actually an ad lib by the actress. It was her idea, but it's really like, it's kind of jarringly sleazy. I watched it a couple times, and it's also strange because it looks like she says "showtive" instead of "showtime." Her lips never close. Her teeth actually, like when you say the letter M, your lips shut together, but her upper teeth actually close on her lower lip as though she's saying the letter V. It was a detail that I caught when I was watching this, through the first time, and I had to roll it back a couple times to confirm.
Well, that's the last thing we should be concerned about, because she also sprays Binaca in her mouth and then sprays it on her cleavage.
Yeah, that's a weird thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with minty fresh boobs, I suppose.
But do you really need to improve on cleavage? I mean, like, what's.
But Greg, they're minty.
Meanwhile, out in the car, Mr. Mustache does a really thoroughly irritating comedy routine surrounding his cocaine, complete with a little Jerry Lewis after he snorts a line. It's just cartoonish and irritating.
He's honking the horn the whole time, yelling her name like, "Hurry up, let's go!" But he leans his head out of the window to yell for Lana, and an axe comes crashing down into the top of Billy's head. So thankfully, R.I.P. Billy.
Yeah, we're spared any more Billy for the rest of this movie. During the axe butchering his head, we get a strange insert shot of his drugs, his cocaine in the mirror being swept away by a reflexive jolt of his arm. It was a weird couple of frames to insert in the middle of his death scene. Billy was played by Bob DeSimone, who is the brother of Tom, who we mentioned earlier this season. Tom was the director of Reform School Girls and a movie called Hell Night, which starred Peter Barton, who played Doug from Part 4. But he began casting his brother Bob in a lot of stuff, and that wound up resulting in Bob DeSimone appearing in Savage Streets for director Danny Steinman, who directed this movie. So that's how how Bob wound up playing Billy here. He now owns his own business and apparently spends a lot of time playing drums for a band out in California. Back in the diner, Lana finishes spraying her breasts with minty fresh Binaca and heads back out to finish closing down the establishment. It's dark and she's a little bit spooked perhaps because no one else is around, but we get a jumping cat scare. So out of nowhere, this stray cat seems to have worked its way into the diner and startled Lana. That feels very much like some sort of producer mandate that there has to be a scare every number of seconds because it serves no purpose whatsoever.
Yeah, it doesn't work at all. So after putting the cat away or whatever she does, Lana makes her way out to Billy's car, but Billy's not there. She gets into the car to wait for Billy, and she sees a bunch of cocaine sitting by Billy's side of the car, and so she's like, "Ooh, here we go."
Yeah, that's the payoff for the insert shot of the drugs being jolted away as Billy got killed.
Yep. So she leans over to get the cocaine, and she sees a pair of boots and a bloody axe on the outside the door. And so as soon as she gets out of the car to run away, she's met with an axe in the stomach. So R.I.P. Lana.
Yeah. And as you noted, that's where this segment ends. It's fading out as her life fades away. Lana was played by Rebecca Wood Sharkey. She's now just Rebecca Wood. For a period of time in the 80s, she was married to actor Ray Sharkey, who was on a popular TV series called Wise Guy. But they divorced after a few years, and after that, he actually wound up dying from complications of AIDS due to intravenous drug use. He was apparently embroiled with some substance abuse problems. She was also in Mask, which is a movie we mentioned last season with Lawrence Monason playing Rocky Dennis's pal. But she's had no credits since 1991. As I noted a few minutes ago, the Showtime reveal of her breasts was her idea, and of course, Danny Steinman, the director, was on board with that.
Before we wrap up, I also want to point out that all 3 killings in this episode were car-based.
Oh, yeah, you're right, because Pete got his neck sliced from the back seat. Billy got his head punctured by an axe while he was sitting in the car, and she now just escaped from the car. Oh, automotive horror.
To find out what car-based killings take place in the next episode, be sure to check us out next week when we dive back into Friday the 13th, A New Beginning. Until then, I'm Brian.
I'm Greg.
And you're all doomed.